All right, we have more changes unfolding in the swamp of Washington, D.C. Changes that have the most controversial law that we've seen in 2 decades just pass through the Congress, the Republican controlled Congress. This is an act that the Biden administration fully supports, something that the IC fully support, the intel community. The Senate will now begin to vote on this today, and it must be voted down or at least modified. This law is what puts the big in big government. You may have heard it mentioned briefly on the news in the past week, maybe in the last 3 minutes of their broadcast, even though, again, it's the most controversial law Congress has voted on, really could vote on, as it gets to the heart of what being an American is supposed to represent, supposed to guarantee privacy, security. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So what the hell just happened in the House? Well, I'll break it down in simple terms. We got screwed. We all just got royally screwed. FISA Section 702. That's the section of FISA that covers who our government's allowed to spy on, how they're allowed to spy on them. That power technically expires tomorrow on April 19th. To extend the power, to permit our government the power to continue spying on us, the Congress has to vote to reauthorize it. And since it expires tomorrow, what do you think's happening behind closed doors right now? The Biden administration and the security state are using that deadline, an artificial deadline, mind you, to pressure these members to reauthorize it. But wait, because there's more. Instead of just reauthorizing the existing spying authority, the IC, working with the offices of legislative councils, decided to rewrite that section of the law. You see, under current law, government's able to compel only communications service providers to assist with their surveillance. This means they can force companies like AT&T and Google to turn over a target's communications. But the new law changes the definition of service provider to any company, any individual who provides any type of service. So your local coffee shop, an Airbnb, a hotel, even a regular homeowner, folks, as long as you provide your Wi-Fi to others, the FBI now, CIA, NSA, they can come in and force you to turn over your communications without a warrant. This also includes, obviously, data centers, landlords, even offices of journalists, lawyers, financial advisors, you name it. And the House of Representatives just agreed to it. This goes beyond politics here. This is not a party line vote. It wasn't a party line vote. This is a pro-American or pro-establishment vote. For example, Republican Andy Biggs brought an amendment that tried to rein in some of this power. His amendment required the government to obtain a warrant before viewing Americans' data. That should be like a no-brainer, right? An easy vote. Well, 86 Republicans voted no, and 126 Democrats voted no, meaning they voted to allow the government to do these warrantless searches on Americans. Think about that. It's a complete betrayal. What our representatives should be doing is reining in this government power, working to limit the scope of what these laws permit. But they aren't. Many of them are doing the opposite. They're working with them, helping them expand their power to spy on you, an American citizen, and without a warrant. Fourth Amendment of the Constitution is supposed to protect us from this. Well, our government could care less. This is the FBI's website if you think I'm full of it. To the run-up of the vote in the House this week, the FBI published this article on their website. This is FBI.gov, folks. Here's the title of the article. A warrant requirement for FBI Section 702 queries would impede investigations and, of course, endanger national security, unquote. It's all out in the open. Here's Joe Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, saying it out loud, that requiring a warrant is not the best way to protect Americans' privacy. Watch this.
So I'm not in a position to stand here today and make veto threats on behalf of the president. Those are decisions for him to make. What I will tell you is that we do not believe that that serves the national security interests of the United States. And in fact, today I will be making that case to a number of members that the warrant requirement as conceived is not the best way actually to ensure the protection of the personal privacy of Americans. There are a number of other elements of the bill that we have supported that would reform and update FISA to protect the civil liberties of Americans. But a warrant requirement from our perspective would go too far in undermining the very purpose of FISA, and frankly, it would put victims at risk.
Then you have the establishment wing of the Republican Party, like Mike Turner from Ohio, the chair of the House Intel Committee, one of the most powerful members of Congress due to his position, coming out to bat for the security state, doing his job to a T, bending over backwards, explaining on CNN how good FISA is. I'm going to spare you from watching that. The point is, this is not red or blue. This is about protecting the uniparty folks, expanding their power even more, and they're using our representatives in Congress to do it. If you give an inch to these people, they'll take a mile. Congress needs to constantly rein in these powers, and our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, a Republican, just failed bigly, urged his conference to vote for this. And keep in mind, this was after he rejected even bringing it to the floor back in December. So what the hell happened? What changed between December to today? Well, here's Mike Johnson in his own words explain why he had a change of heart. Watch this.
When I was a member of the judiciary, I saw all the abuses of the FBI, the terrible abuses over and over and over, the hundreds of thousands of abuses. And then when I became speaker, I went to the SCIF and got the confidential briefing from sort of the other perspective on that to understand the necessity of Section 702 of FISA and how important it is for national security. And it gave me a different perspective. So I encourage all the members to go to the classified briefing and hear all that and see it so they can evaluate the situation for themselves. And I think some opinions have changed both ways, but that's part of the process. You got to be fully informed.
Have you been Excuse me.
He believes the intel, he says. He believes the intel agencies. His job is to defend the Constitution, not believe the intel agencies. This makes no sense, folks. Mike Johnson became the speaker accidentally, but he was nominated because he was a newer member of Congress. He appeared to have some principles, at least based on his voting record. When he was running for the speakership, he said all the right things. He was adamantly opposed to more Ukraine military aid, was opposed to FISA, appeared to believe in civil liberties. So what happened? I have no idea, but in a matter of a few months, the systems appear to whip his ass into shape. He's fallen in line. In fact, his positions have changed so dramatically that one of his colleagues said this about him last week. Listen to this.
Yeah, absolutely, especially considering Mike Johnson has completely changed his character in a matter of about 5 months after he has become Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson is a Christian. He called himself a conservative, always has been. He's a Republican member, but yet here we are after the minibus was passed just almost 2 weeks ago in Washington. And now with the $60 billion going to a war in Ukraine that 70% of Americans do not support it. That's the most recent polling. 70% of Americans and the majority of Republicans do not support funding Ukraine. People want to see a peace deal in Ukraine, not murdering more Ukrainians and more Russians. This needs to end. But no, Mike Johnson has made a complete departure of who he is and what he stands for. And to the point where people are literally asking, is he blackmailed? What is wrong with him? Because he's completely disconnected with what we want.
Do you think he is being blackmailed?
I have no idea. I can't comprehend, Tucker, what radically changes a man.
So is that true? No clue. Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to think it's a question worth asking because realize this bill should never have even gotten onto the floor. He could have prevented the vote. He's the speaker. It's his decision. And if a normal person, if any of us were in that position, no American in their right mind would allow a vote on this unless there were some special interests at play. Trump posted on Truth Social last week, quote, "Kill FISA. It was illegally used against me and many others. They spied on my campaign," unquote. So the former president tells Mike Johnson to not bring the vote and to get rid of FISA, yet President Biden and the IC support it, and Mike Johnson sides with them. Bottom line is, our government is so big it's terrifying, and the people who are supposed to be representing us, the people we elect, are pawns of the system, and that's why the Congress people who voted no on this are the good ones, folks. This vote, the people who voted to not reauthorize FISA. Not like this. Those people will tell you who is working for you or against you. And the funny thing is, the vast majority of the 128 Congress people who voted no are the same members that the media smears and ridicules constantly. I wonder why, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, just to name a few. There's Democrats in there too. You hear such terrible things about them in the media, but they voted no. When it counts, what does that tell you? Look, this is about more than politics. This is about our civil liberties, the rights we have as Americans, the right to privacy. And if this law passes the Senate, it's the biggest win for establishment Washington since the Patriot Act. And they didn't even have to whip anything up like they did back when they passed the Patriot Act. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.